I think one thing I do want to make sure that everyone knows that's watching, this is your conversation, right? So I'm going to help facilitate it and make sure that it moves smoothly, I guess, but please ask questions and feel free to chime in. Use the Q&A box. DJ and I will chat a little bit, but feel free to please add those to us so that we can have a more robust dialogue for what people are looking for, right? So without further ado, let me introduce our speaker. DJ is a proud Long Beach State alum and earned his degree in management. DJ started his career in the hospitality industry, where he identified opportunities across various areas of sports, eventually leading to his current position working with the Lakers. He has worked with sports organizations at the collegiate and professional level and uses those experiences to help further the South Bay Lakers and the overall G League brand. The South Bay Lakers are an American professional basketball team of the NBA G League based in Los Angeles and owned by the Los Angeles Lakers. Joining us today to discuss the sports industry is DJ Dikitanan, and if you don't mind correcting me on that pronunciation.
No, you nailed it pretty well, actually. And to be honest, it's one of those. It's not easy, but you pretty much nailed it. So thank you for that. Hi everyone. Thanks for having me again. Super excited to be here.
So DJ, I think just kind of starting off with telling us a little bit about your career path in general, a little bit about you, college. That'd be great to kind of kick us off.
Yeah. So I obviously went to Long Beach State, class of 2014. I actually entered Long Beach State as a nursing major, and I really honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I have a lot of nurses in my family, so it was a natural thought, career path. I'll just become a nurse. I remember literally going to orientation and sitting through the nursing side, and I was like, wow, this is not for me. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. So I remember that day, I literally went to the office. I was like, hey, you know what? Actually, this is not of interest to me, but I've always just been interested in business. And so I became a business major on the day I went to nursing orientation. And from there, I really enjoyed I went through the business management program. And it was a great experience throughout the process. I didn't have a clear cut goal on what I wanted to do. At the same time, I actually started working at a hotel over Marina Del Rey at the Ritz-Carlton over there. And actually, that's how I got my start in the hospitality industry. And it was super interesting because it was honestly my first job whatsoever right off the gate. And it was such an eye-opening experience because I'm from a small town in the high desert, Apple Valley, for anyone that's familiar. And it's a very small town out in the desert. And it was literally night and day. I was working at a hotel on the water, super nice hotel, where I was meeting people that I never thought I'd meet or see. And it kind of opened my eyes because there was a lot of opportunities to engage with folks that work in sports. And so I think that's kind of where the first spark really came from of, hey, I could possibly work in sports. It's of interest to me. The folks that were super nice and willing to give me the time of day to talk, it was great. And it kind of gave me a really good insight. And so throughout my 4 years on Long Beach, I didn't have a clear cut goal, but sports was always kind of on the back burner. And I remember my senior year, I was really interested in sports and pursuing either the sport management program at Long Beach. I actually went through the University of San Francisco just because I wanted to change the scenery. I wanted to move around a little bit. And they were both great experiences. I think throughout the program so I went to the University of San Francisco for their sport management program, and they have a campus in Orange County. So that's where I went. And my sports industry experience, that's where it really started. I worked at USC for 2 years in game management operations, became the graduate assistant there, bounced around a couple of times between different volunteer opportunities and different experiences there. Some of my favorite ones, Long Beach Grand Prix, that was a fun one when it was still the Toyota Long Beach Grand Prix. That was a great experience. I worked on the Super Bowl 50 host committee up in San Francisco for a couple months. That was a whirlwind of an experience. I was definitely probably the most underqualified person there, but it was a heck of a learning experience, and the team there was great. I worked a little bit at UCLA on their sponsorship arm with IMG College, who handles a lot of the sponsorship elements of a lot of colleges across the country. And then after UCLA, I was looking at the Lakers, and I grew up a Laker fan. I grew up a Kobe fan, and so that's where I really wanted to be. And actually, I applied for a job with the Los Angeles Lakers during my time at the University of San Francisco, and I went through the process. And ultimately, I didn't get the job the first time around. And it was because of my schedule and the scheduling of school versus game nights for the Lakers. There was a conflict there. But I told myself, I'd be back. I would be back, and I would find a way in because that's where I wanted to be. And Fast forward a couple months, I applied again, reached out to everyone I interviewed with and spoke with, and told them, hey, I'm interested again. I'm no longer in school. And, I went through the process again, and I was hired the second time around. So it wasn't easy the first time, obviously getting denied. The first time I was crushed. Getting the second yes, I still remember the day where I got the call, and I was stoked I was in. And since then, I really haven't looked back. I love the Lakers. I love the Lakers brand. And the Lakers brand has given me such a great opportunity to learn not only sports from such a major brand, but the sports industry as a whole, really. And especially now what we're going through with COVID-19, there's so many different nuances and different things to learn and to take on, and so many changes day by day. But it's been a heck of a learning experience so far. That's just kind of a little tidbit of, how I ended up to be.
You gave me so much. There's like so much I want to ask you. So many little pieces there. I do want to touch base back really quickly to the graduate experience, and then we'll definitely get to some of the more relatable things to COVID and how that's affecting the industry for sure. But just on your grad, you said you went to your graduate school, and then you were a graduate assistant at one of the. How did that kind of transition work, right? Like, what was the application process? Like, was it pretty quick, or how did you decide that? And then that first graduate assistantship, how did that work?
Yeah. So how it worked was, went to the University of San Francisco, and, our orientation night, they gave you the opportunity to meet, and I worked with a bunch of alumni. And the program was great in terms of the alumni that they invited already had, opportunities, internships on hand, ready to not necessarily hand out, but hey, we have a pool of candidates, pool of interested students that are ready to work, get their hands dirty, let's reach out to them. And that's what happened to me on that first night. And so one of the current students, she actually developed a relationship with the athletic department over at USC, and they were just looking for game day operations interns, which is a great internship and really a great path for anyone looking to get into the sports industry. It's a very natural first step, just because there are so many, it's such a wide role where there's so many different pieces to it, where it's very easy to hop in and kind of make your mark. And so I went through the process with them in terms of interviewing a couple times. And I was brought on. There was about a team of 6 to 8 of us, I believe, and 2 graduate assistants that oversaw us. We reported to the associate athletic director of game management operations, who my old boss, I still keep in contact with even to this day. Good guy.
Yeah.
But he oversaw us, and we did everything on game day that whether it was, hey, make sure the signs are up, or hey, make sure are the gates ready to open, or all those little things. But that was kind of the process for getting in.
For sure. And I think that kind of spurred some of the ideas of one of our viewers, just asking about, how did you keep up to speed with just that industry, getting that jargon understood and getting all the different things that were happening with the sports entertainment industry. Like, how did you stay abreast and really get up to speed on everything?
It's so general, but I can't speak enough to how important it is just to read, to be educated, to keep up with the news. For me, it was, one thing that they recommended for all of us was the Sports Business Journal. It's a great journal, really, where anything and everything sports is going on, not just, it's so wide ranging and encompassing. It was expensive, but also it was really cool because I had a lot of other students in the program that hey, let's split it up X amount of ways. So we all had, the login, and we shared the login. It was really helpful because not only are you learning the jargon, are you learning the language that people in sports speak, but it also gives you an opportunity to see what's next, right? To see, hey, this is where the industry is at, especially, given the current times. This is where we think it's going, and, positioning yourself to where you are marketable for those roles and opportunities that, you think may be forthcoming.
And probably also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but probably also what direction exactly, maybe get a feeler for where you wanted to head, especially during the graduate experience.
Totally. And I think it's, especially in the sports industry, because it's an industry where there's a lot of eyes looking in. And, I remember part of the reason why I wanted to become or join the sports industry is because I loved Jerry Maguire as a kid. I love that movie. I was like, wow, I'm gonna become a sports agent. That's gonna be me, right? I'm gonna find the next Rod Tidwell, right? And, entering, I remember my first night, and there's nothing against agency and agents whatsoever, but, even the first night that I was in there, the agency is just it's such a far thing to grasp. And I encourage anyone that really wants to pursue it. But there's a lot that goes into that. And so, but with that said, there's so many different areas within the sports industry that you also just don't know if you're going to like it until you try it. I always thought, for a second, hey, if I want to be an agent, I need to know how to scout people, right? I need to know how to scout talent. And I did like a scouting internship, if you will. And I can honestly say I'm glad I did it, but I'm glad I'm not in the scouting area because it was hard work. And so I think, you know, just as reading, I think it's the experience of knowing, hey, I really like this. This is what I want to pursue, is almost just as important as saying, hey, I tried this and that is not for me. And that's kind of what I learned with a couple different internships along the way too.
You know, that's great. I think it kind of ties us into the next piece, because if we're talking about your internship experience and kind of learning what direction you want to go, but also, you know, I'm sure there had to be some, you mentioned already some names of connections in an associate vice president, associate director, and associate vice president, I believe, when it comes to making relationships, right, and networking with other folks. What opportunities did you pursue that maybe helped with that, or not, that maybe didn't help with that?
Yeah, I think one thing that is unique to sports, and maybe not just sports, but entertainment and jobs where you work very odd hours and weekends and holidays, is that you work these times and periods, and a lot of the time you spend more time with your colleagues than you do your own family, right? And so whether it's Christmas Day for the Lakers, or, you know, you can name off any game on any holiday, right? You're spending your time, these big moments with your colleagues, with your employees. And so sometimes it's almost easier, right? Because you spend a lot of time with them. And during the season for me, I have a 2-year-old. And so it's tough because sometimes I get home and he's ready to sleep, right? But also it's cool to develop relationships and have people in the workplace that you really like to work with, that you can talk to, that you can have very real conversations even outside of work, because you spend a lot of the time in season with these people more than your family.
So in some ways, you're almost naturally building these relationships based on
exactly. And I think that's something that's something that I really enjoy, is because I do enjoy meeting new people, but also I'm very proud of, you know, the people that I've met, just because I feel like I've met some really good people. You know, and my old boss, I remember that, you know, he would bring his nephew around all the time. And his nephew would just kind of tag around and help out. And now me and his nephew are really good friends, and we keep track, and we're friends we follow each other on Instagram, and we talk now and again, and we play Call of Duty. So like, it's fun because, again, you just spend so much time with these people, and you realize there's so many others like you that have the same interests, and it makes it so much easier to develop the relationship. And it's not just for personal, right? I mean, there's some people that I understand that this is a business and there's a networking side of it too. And so that allows you to just, you know, the big events, the big experiences, you really never know who you're running into. And so I think that's also one thing just to be mindful of for folks looking to get into the industry, is, you know, there's always someone in the building. The sports industry is very small. And so it's, in some ways, it's a blessing and a curse, you know, to have it so small where you can meet so many people.
Yeah, I could see where that could also be a curse, right? Anything wrong could, you know, gets amplified a little bit more, but definitely a blessing, because you're not in some places, and we've been doing a lot of these great conversations with some alumni folks, and it can be extra difficult sometimes to have a workplace that doesn't offer something like that, some opportunity to connect with mentors and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, I just want to pivot a bit more into the COVID conversation, just because I do know that is a lot of our viewers are interested to know what the industry is looking like right now when it comes to that. You know, you made this leap into the industry after a very successful, you know, undergraduate and graduate student career. It looks like with great opportunities across the board, and then leading into this as well. But as far as, we have a question here from Danny. Thank you, Danny, who's just interested about how COVID-19 is impacting the industry when it comes to like getting an internship, right? And or what are some pointers you may have for virtual internships, or is that something the industry is talking about, or, you know, what is the conversation like when it comes to that entry point that we just discussed for you, for our current day folks who may be looking at that piece there?
Yeah, I think first off, it's kudos to those that are, you know, still on the hunt, that are looking for jobs, looking for internships, because, you know, I don't know how many times we're going to hear we're in unprecedented times and how difficult it is, but
every email, basically every email.
You can't open an email, or you can't enter a form like this without acknowledging this big elephant in the room, because it is difficult. And, you know, one of the obvious things that comes along with the difficulties we've seen, right, is, you know, the B word, budget, right? You know, the obvious thing is, are we making money? Is there enough budget to go around to continue to hire, to bring folks on? I did unpaid internships, and they gave me great experience, but also, you know, there's privilege there in the sense that, you know, I did have some help. I had other jobs, and I was able to take on unpaid internships, and that may not be feasible for everyone. And so acknowledging that privilege within itself, it's hard because in this given day and age, especially in the NBA, where we're hoping to get back to basketball soon at the end of this month. And if you're on social media today, you've seen some teams packing up their buses, getting ready to head to Orlando. It's very uncharted territory. Virtual internships, virtual opportunities have been on our radar. A fun side, but our community relations team, they do virtual team up events where instead of it's hard to get out and volunteer in the community, but we're setting up time with local schools and even high school students looking to get into college or to find that next step professionally. We're setting up time with them, hey, just to talk to them, give them some direction. So there's we're starting to get those gears turning there, in terms of like solid internships and those type of experiences. It's really difficult right now. But I think what you're also seeing is, how can we get creative, right? The virtual thing is without a doubt the one piece to look at. Looking forward, teams are starting to get back into their buildings, getting back to business, really, modified versions. But I think just keeping a pulse on where the industry is going in terms of, esports. Esports have always been, not always, but, they're particularly positioned to excel in this type of environment where you don't need physical contact, right? Or where there's not many people in one given area. So that's one area I highly recommend. Our sponsorship team, like normally right now is we're looking at stuff for next season. We're starting conversations. To be fully transparent, right now is probably, if things were normal, this is the time when we're looking for internships and associates for next season. But we're not even finished up with this season. The obvious thing, right, is just, turning on those notifications for all those networks. And, teamwork is a big one for the sports industry, teamwork online. If you've applied for a couple jobs within the sport industry, I'm sure you're familiar with teamwork. And that's one I recommend. But I just can't stress enough just to continue to read and be educated on where the industry is going, and to kind of position yourself in that way.
Yeah, so looking for some personal development opportunities, mainly looking at things like teamwork potentially. I will say on the esports piece, even on our campus, we're doing more activities and games over the summer for students to engage with, just so that there's still an outlet of recreation at some level, right? So I think ultimately when we talk about the industry, it is entertainment and recreation, and this kind of great livelihood for folks to feel joy, right? And participate in something. So
without a doubt. And it provides such a distraction, right? Like that's, there's undoubtedly we can joke around and talk about, starting in January, when Kobe passed away. And since then, there's been so many things that happened, right? But we're, I forget which baseball player it was that said it, but, sports and professional sports is kind of an outlet in which, it's a reward for a functioning society, and for lack of, it's tough because it almost doesn't feel like we're there right now, right? With so much going on. Outside of even COVID-19, right? So it's good to have these distractions, and it's good to get back to give us a little sense of what normal used to be like.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect because we did get a question. I know I'm a little familiar with the Orlando move and the bubble, if you will, that's being created. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because not everyone may be watching as an NBA fan. Maybe they have different, disciplines within the industry.
So the bubble essentially is, we have, I think there's 22 teams that are going to Orlando, right, to compete for playoff spots and to compete for a championship. And so the bubble is really, is there so we can get back to business, right? But also there are a lot of safety protocols in place to where we can limit, that we can encourage social distancing still, while still, getting back to basketball, getting back to Lakers basketball. So 22 teams are heading out. They'll play a couple games to determine playoff seeding, and then from there we'll go into the playoffs. So we'll continue to move there. Teams are they're getting out to Orlando over the next couple of days, and then from there, I don't know a lot of the small details really, but essentially there are a lot of protocols and safety protocols in place to ensure that our guys are safe, the employees are safe. It's not just the players that are going, right? There are our staff members that are heading out there that are leaving their families behind too. So, although we are excited to get back to basketball, there are also some tough realities that, families may be separated for quite a while. So it's a challenge though. It's, everyone's learning, everyone's doing their best version of what they think is best. And, we're going to continue to listen to experts on how to best protect our staff, our players, while still understanding that we want to get back to basketball. basketball. So it's that tough in between, right? We're going to do our best to make sure, you know, safety is number one, and while still getting back to basketball.
You know, is the EU done something similar, or are we the first to do this for basketball?
I understand that soccer overseas has gone back. So like we're not the first league. I think the NBA is going to be like the first major league in the United States really to get back to it. I know soccer, MLS is going to Orlando as well. So I know we're definitely not the first ones internationally. But I think here in the States, a lot of eyes are going to be on how we move forward, especially, you know, the NFL season's coming up, right? You know, I saw rumors of preseason games being canceled too. So I'm sure without a doubt, they're watching to see best practices, protocols, all those things.
So, you know, on that point though, I think one of the things I've just seen in the news has been, and I think very much is what you're talking about when it comes to safety, is if something happens within that situation, I'm sure there's a lot of concern about keeping everyone in there as safe as possible and not to contract COVID, because then that would be a whole different situation.
Totally. And, you know, I think Adam Silver, I think made mention that, you know, we're going to do our best, right? We're again, unprecedented times, uncharted territory. But also understanding that, you know, we've been able to pivot and move on a swivel, and that's kind of what, not only us, that's what every industry has been doing so far. So, you know, in a perfect world, we're hoping X, Y, and Z happens, right? But I'm sure, you know, there's some safety plans in place to ensure if things go worse. And obviously, right, Florida, we can look at Florida and Texas, and there's some states that are seeing increasing cases. And so, without a doubt, you know, nothing that is being done, for lack of a better word, is being done in a bubble, right? You know, there's so many moving parts to how we move forward, and so all those things are really, you know, being taken into consideration.
Yeah, even though we call it the bubble, right?
Even though we call it the bubble, yeah.
No, that's perfect. So I'm gonna get a little bit back to your story, and then we can get back to some more COVID stuff. So as far as like your journey, and when it comes to, you know, so can you tell me a little bit more about between your application to Lakers and then kind of how that this whole happened right in that middle?
Yeah, no, totally. So I will say, my first internship was at USC was at the collegiate level, and I really enjoyed the collegiate level, especially because you get to be a little more hands-on. There's a lot more interaction with fans versus what I do now. But also it was a fun experience for those looking to get into the industry, because it literally allowed me to network and be with so many people. So USC was the first stop. I was there for 2 years. The first year as the game operations intern, and then the second year I was brought on as the graduate assistant, where I got to build my own team of game operations interns, which was great. Along the way, I did some volunteering with some other organizations, Long Beach Grand Prix. I did basketball tournaments. I did WCC. I did, you know, Mountain West. I did a couple of, you know, those big tournaments, which was great. And a lot of those, I will say, the collegiate level of sports there's so many different opportunities to get your feet wet and to try new things. And I think basketball, especially, you know, March Madness and things surrounding the tournaments, is great because everyone's excited. There's so many different people involved. You know, we have the Honda Center down the way. We have Staples Center. So there's already opportunities for those in the area to be involved with that. Along the way, our program did a lot of great, provided us with a lot of opportunities to where I'm similar probably to the Long Beach State program, where they just email out different job opportunities and internship opportunities. And that was the same for us over at San Francisco. And another one, since we were based in San Francisco, was having, you know, the Super Bowl 50 host committee there and having Super Bowl 50 up there. And so I went up there, and it was just a job. It was not even a job. I'm sorry. It was a volunteer opportunity. But, you know, it was like, hey, I have friends up there. You know, I can volunteer for a couple hours, and I'll crash with my friends. I'll drive up. And so I did that, and it was like, hey, I really love being here. This is a great opportunity. Let me know if you guys are hiring. You know, I can move up here. I can do this for a little bit. And so staying in contact was really important. You know, just following up. Even when I didn't need something, it was just, hey, how are you guys doing? Let me know how things are going. I saw XYZ, you know, on TV, and I know you guys are. I saw teams are going out there, just really staying in touch. That's really big across all of my experiences, was continuing to reach out, especially and even when, you know, I didn't need anything, right? Because we all have those friends and colleagues that for some reason, you know, you see your phone ring, you know, when they need something, right? Which is totally fine. Mm-hmm. But, you know, those that are hiring, those that are in roles to bring on staff, they're also not oblivious to that, right? So they can understand. But really being genuine and developing those relationships and staying in touch and just having a natural curiosity really afforded me the opportunity of, they reached out, I think in November, and they were like, hey, we're building a team for, the 2-3 weeks of Super Bowl. Would you like to come up and we'll put you up? And I was like, no job, no kids, no dog, none of that. I was like, yeah, that sounds incredible. I'll live in a hotel for 2-3 months and I'll work in San Francisco. And it was a great experience. And I was on the hospitality team there where we hosted clients, we hosted, VIP players, we hosted parties, things like that. And it was a whirlwind of a time. And again, I was easily the most underqualified person in that room. But there was some flexibility to learn, to grow. And that's one really great thing I really respected about my manager there, was giving us the opportunity to grow and to learn while also still having a job to do.
Well, I think curiosity is the key that I'm hearing from some of the stuff you're talking about, because it's curiosity and motivation, right? It's not just being
exactly
in it, but it's also pushing yourself to. You went to go do a volunteer thing up in NorCal without. It's not paid, is it? What I understood, right?
Yeah, it was just. I just wanted to cruise up and see my friends, and I was like, "Hey, it sounds like a great experience. Let's do it."
When I think about a through line between some of the alum that we've been speaking with, I think that's a great piece of it, right? It's kind of being curious, because it doesn't sound only curious about the industry, but also about the people that you're chatting with and you're kind of keeping connected with over time. Because I don't really know how you do a genuine relationship without actually just generally being curious about who they are and what they're on. Yeah.
Exactly.
We had I think that's perfect, because we did have one of our speakers was one of a leader in kind of leadership development and like connecting businesses and all that. And that was one of the biggest things she could talk about, was being curious. So I love that you said that. Mm-hmm. And then I think, tying that to motivation, which I think is which is like your application to the Lakers 2 times, right? So tell us about that process and like what made the difference, or like what was the difference?
Yeah, so I think for anyone that's ever really wanted to work for a certain brand or certain organization, I think there's a few moments that all of us can probably remember, right? Is, seeing that opportunity. For me, it was seeing that opportunity, understanding, hey, I'm qualified for this. I have a shot at this. And that excitement, that genuine feeling of, I think I can do this, right? I remember that. And I also remember going through the process and writing my cover letter and making sure everything was perfect. Because I'm like, in my mind, I have only one shot to do this, right? Mm-hmm. And then going through the process, I interviewed 2 to 3 times. And I remember I interviewed with some of the same folks both times. And they remember I was back. And I remember the first time, though, the one thing I really took away was my last set of rounds was with our VP of ticketing. And I remember that conversation, because after working with her for 2 years, and even now in my role, and knowing who she is, looking back, she's tough, but she gets the job done, and she's very respected, not only within the Lakers brand, but in ticketing as a whole, in sports ticketing. And she's so legit in her role that, it was great for me, because I kind of knew about her, but also at the same time, there's this youngness and this lack of almost polish in a way that really showed her, hey, he's actually kind of interested in this, right? To where, he may not be perfect right now, but we can get him to where we want him to be, after a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and so on. And the thing, though, I take away from the first interview that's really funny is I didn't get the job, right? I thought I nailed it. I thought, I walked out of there and I was super confident. And I remember seeing the Laker logo on the building, and I was like, I'm going to be here. This is it. And I didn't get it. And I remember getting the email and I was deflated, right? It was like, hey, thank you for your time. But, let us know when you're done with school, because, scheduling is a conflict, right? Because we have a lot of games on game nights. And I was crushed. And the motivated side of me, the petty side of me, whatever you want to call it, I printed out that email. And I put it on my desk, and I said, I'll be back. And I looked at it for quite a while, and it just sat on my desk. And my girlfriend, now fiance, she just looked at me like, you're kind of crazy, you're kind of weird, but it's fine. Just, do what you need to do. And, but I kept it up there, and it was a sign of, hey, I was that close, right? If I was that close this time, and that was the only thing holding me back then you hold on to that email, make sure you come back. And the petty part of me was, fast forward, I think it was a year and a half after, I saw the job opportunity come up again. And, in my mind, I'm like, am I ready to be hurt again? I don't want to be hurt again. I don't want to go through this and not get it again. But also part of me was like, hey, if there was ever a chance for you to do it, right? You're out of school, you finished up, you're looking for a job. Let's nail this again. And so I reached out to her on that same email thread. I'm like, hey, hope all is well. I'm back. I saw the position was posted. Would love to connect and see if if there's still a fit, right? And the process moved really fast. And I will say I interviewed with some of the same people again, and they acknowledged, hey, you're back, and we're very excited to see if you're the guy. And the second time around, I was. But I guess the biggest takeaway that I think I share for anyone looking for a job and kind of anyone on the hunt right now is it's not going to be pretty. It's you think you're going to get from point A to point B pretty easily, and sometimes you stop at B and you hit the C, and then sometimes D, hanging out at D for a while, and you kind of move around for a while. But for me, I always knew I had a general direction of where I wanted to head. After the first time around, I knew I wanted to be back, and so staying committed, persevering, but also again continuing to network and to stay into touch was something that I can't really stress enough for folks trying to not only get into the industry, but also establish yourself as someone within this industry. Because I know a lot of friends too that did the program and networked and did the sports thing, and they're already out, and it's no fault to them, and they got their taste and that was it for them, and that's totally fine, and they have very great jobs outside of sports. But there's some of us too that really enjoyed the sports industry and that we've stayed in, and we're still trying to make a name for ourselves and be ingrained in not only in the industry itself, but carve out new things for us and for students that are trying to do the same thing that we did.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I think that's excellent advice for our listeners as well. I think, we have a pretty good sense of how you got to where you are now, but I guess I haven't asked you much about what you do on the daily. So I would love for you to chat a little bit about that job and how that kind of looks, and what being a manager with the South Bay Lakers looks like.
Yeah, so our team is pretty small. So I'm the manager of business operations for the South Bay Lakers, which is the G League affiliate of the Los Angeles Lakers. So we work pretty closely. Some teams are very different, and how the league is kind of arranged is, the NBA, the WNBA, the G League, and the gaming side, they all fall under the NBA umbrella. And so for us, the Laker brand, everyone falls, which is not super common, but not uncommon, is everything falls under the same umbrella, same building over in El Segundo. That's where we all work out of. So everyone that works the Lakers brand is out of there. And so I work very closely with all the different, there's certain overlaps in certain areas, but my role really is being the middleman, being the conduit through which everything really flows, whether it's sponsorship, game entertainment, ticketing, basketball operations, being the middleman for all the different departments and really just pushing the brand forward. The G League obviously is how we position the G League is it's the development arm of the NBA, where we can try new things and see if things work and see if things don't. For example, in the G League this past year, we tested out a new free throw rule. So for those that follow basketball in the G League, free throws are worth more than 1 point given where you're fouled, right? So it could be one shot for 2 points, or you could be fouled shooting a three-pointer, and the one free throw is worth 3 points. And so that's something we tested out in the G League, and that's something that that was worked on for quite a few years, and then there was a lot of hesitance with really trying it out. But eventually we did it, and now to an extent, fans don't even recognize it. It's just part of the game now. And so that's just one piece of testing out new things that the league really tries to do. So I know on my side, again, I'm the middleman. So game entertainment, that's like one area that I really work closely with. So obviously coordinating in-game elements of what that looks like. We do a lot of theme nights. So a lot, really separate from the Lakers brand and from maybe a lot of other major sports. Other teams will do like Pokemon night or Harry Potter night, things like that. We do our own versions of those, but maybe not as major brands, but we have like different themes to it, which is really fun. So game entertainment, coordinating with them, the different elements is really important. Sponsorship, we had our first ever sponsored theme night, which is obviously great for us because we get to activate a really fun theme night for our fans and have a sponsor attached to it and pick up, obviously, the bill and include a lot of the elements into it. So working with sponsorship to make sure our product is very not only engaging, but interesting to both fans and to sponsors. Ticketing, giving ticketing, everything. I work pretty closely with ticketing in terms of getting them the resources they need to reach out to season ticket members, to groups, to single game buyers to get them to come to games, but also giving them some unique resources, whether it's, hey, if you buy X amount of tickets, I'll work with basketball operations and I can get you guys to meet so-and-so, this player, Kostas Antetokounmpo, or, whoever it may be, right? So I work with basketball and ticketing to kind of set up those opportunities. We've set up Zoom calls with some of our season ticket members and some of our coaches. And so I really help facilitate a lot of those conversations on the basketball side. I worked with, the behind the scenes stuff of, getting our building ready, of, talking next year. We're looking at dates, right? We have to figure out, when can we host games? And there's obviously a lot of conversations that we have there that are really tied with the Los Angeles Lakers too, since some of the players can go back and forth. And that's kind of just a brief overview. The day-to-day, it can vary really. I work a lot with ticketing though. I work a lot with the building to make sure the building's good to go for game nights. But that's kind of a brief overview. It's kind of, again, just really a conduit for all the different departments.
Oh, and I apologize. I actually just saw, thank you so much. My screen stopped scrolling for the questions, so I missed a couple of things that we've been having come through here, but
you're good.
That's perfect. So I think what you've been talking about is spurring a lot of conversation, and so I'm going to just kind of go through some of the things that
totally
folks have been asking about. So yeah, just kind of on that point, just how long have you been in that position, and then do you have, are you looking at moving, or how does that kind of work for your area? What does your trajectory look like for yourself? But then also just kind of, what does your future look like when it comes to?
Yeah. So I've spent this finishing my third season with the Lakers. The first 2 years I was in ticketing. Last year I made the jump over to the G League side because it was a great learning opportunity for growth, and to become the manager. So I've been in this role for coming up on a year now. And, for me, I don't know I really love my role because unlike the NBA, the G League, there's a lot of different opportunities to innovate, to try new things, to really experiment. And, there's certain brands that we can all think of off the top of our head that are very classic. You can identify them as classic or very, I'm blanking on probably the best word for this, but they're established in a way that, they may not be as open to trying new things. And so there's an identified brand that the Los Angeles Lakers have that, we may not try something on that side, but hey, the G League, the South Bay Lakers is a great opportunity to test X, Y, and Z out. So that's one really great thing I love about my role is I get to do a lot of experimental things. We had 90s night this past January, and we team up with a charity each theme night to work with, and we worked with, I love dogs, and so we worked with an animal rescue that one of our staff works with, and so we had dogs on site that players can meet, that the staff can meet, the fans can meet. You could adopt them on site. So that's just like one example of something fun, different that we wouldn't really try out on the Los Angeles side. But yeah, I've been in my role for about a year now. In terms of what's next, I know everyone says it, but I'm really happy in my role because again, I get to try out these new and different things, and I love the Lakers. There's opportunities internally to move around. One unique thing about the Lakers that, that's kind of unique to them and maybe not other teams is since we're family owned by the Bus family, there are a lot of folks that have been there for countless years, longer than I've been alive, really. And so, the obvious thing, right, is if they're not leaving, those roles aren't opening up as often, right? And so to climb the ladder could be a little difficult with not just us, but just any industry and team really that has a lot of those folks. But it's also great because these folks are really good at what they do, and there's a reason why they've been here so long, right? So it's a double-edged sword. But for those that are that are looking to, especially for me, someone that's looking to grow and to climb, I use 2 years as a really good marker, and that may not be for everyone. But I think 2 years, it takes about 2 years, at least in my experience, to really learn a role and to kind of see how things play out. And that's my goal is I'm going to be here at least 2 years, if not longer, just to see, because I know there's things without a doubt my first year that I was really excited about. And then there's things that, I talked a big game about that, I didn't see come to fruition. So there's definitely some things on my radar that I'm looking forward to tackling in year 2 and with COVID and whatnot that will just make it more interesting and more engaging for me to imagine staying here that much longer.
So I guess kind of 2 questions with that, and one's spurred by Danny a bit, one of our viewers as well. When it comes to, you mentioned earlier about working in the college environment and being closer with fans and things, is that something you would ever consider going to the college environment, or maybe talk a little bit more about your experience with USC and maybe compare those, I suppose?
My experience of working collegiate sports was great, and I was a college student at the time. I was younger. I'm not going to act like I'm super old or anything, but you know, it was a different phase of my life where that was fun. You know, I love being around the students, and you know, you work with a lot of other students because they also have a lot of similar roles to you. And so I think it's different when you get to work with your peers, right? Because you're very hands-on, you get to do things. There's a little more autonomy, I'd say, at the college level, because there's just so much more going on, right? You have not only have your major sports in basketball and football, but you have all your Olympic sports. And so for me, you know, at USC, the big one was obviously football. And so working at the Coliseum and kind of being there was a great experience. I think one of my favorite memories was when my boss, you know, the Heisman trophies, they sit on campus and then we bring them over to campus. And I remember it was a late game, it was like double overtime, and he was like, I'm tired, I'm heading home. Can you bring the Heismans back to you know, campus? And I was like, oh, I can do that. That's totally fine. I can. And there was three of them. I remember it was Carson Palmer. Who else was it? I can't remember. Carson Palmer was definitely one there. But then it was funny because I remember one of the funny things that I take away was I strapped him in seatbelts in my back seat, and I drove him back over to campus.
Well, you gotta take care of him. You gotta
take care of him, right? So I strapped him in, and that was just like something funny that I just think about sometimes. Was, God, I had 3 Heismans in the back seat of my car, and you know, but it's just craziness, right? There's some fun things that, you know, I don't know if that would ever happen at the NBA level. I've had the trophy for certain events, but you know, I think the collegiate level offers such a wide range of unique experiences that, you know, I loved it. I would go back to it maybe down the road. I love USC. That was my first really role in sports, and so that place has a special place in my heart. I went across town. I worked for UCLA for quite a bit, completely different atmosphere over in Westwood. But I love the area. I love the people I met over there. Football is also great. The Rose Bowl is so unique, and I love going there for concerts. The collegiate level offers those that work in it such a wider range of opportunities, I think, because there's so many other venues and different areas involved that it really, for me at least, it helped me identify areas that I found interesting and areas that I didn't find interesting. And so I think for those that are looking to get into sports, I think the collegiate area is a great opportunity if you can get in, because it does afford you to learn, to grow, and to identify, oh, that's really not for me, you know, or, hey, this is an area I'm really passionate about. I would like to, you know, investigate further, try it out more. If I were to go back, you know, I think I would, because I loved it so much. I'd probably go back to like a major university to have some of that big university feel, really. But I also know friends that, you know, like colleagues that have worked in sports that actually kind of left, and they'll go to smaller markets, and it affords them to climb the ladder even faster. So if you're willing to make that move, for those that are more open to moving, I'm not, I'm pretty rooted where I am. But if you're open to moving to, you know, areas where there's, you know, smaller schools, smaller universities, you have a much greater opportunity to continue to climb, probably a little faster.
So is that one of, you know, we did get a question earlier that was asking about like internships to start with, is just kind of looking at collegiate level internships would be a good start, is what I'm kind of hearing from you.
In my experience, I'd say so. You know, I'd say so, just because, again, there's just so many different areas to explore, so many different sports to oversee. You know, it's not just, people forget, it's not just basketball, it's not just football. There's so many other sports that still need operations, that still need management, that still need to oversee.
Yeah, we are. Thank you. A couple other things on just like kind of the COVID situation. When it comes to everything that you're talking about with the G League, how is that more or less affecting your operations more specifically? Then, because I know we talked a little bit about NBA and the bubble, what's happening there. Is there a different version of that, or kind of maybe how does that look for the sports industry right now?
Yeah, so I think actually earlier, I think Cynthia and Noemi and I think we kind of touched on it, where there's, you know, for fans and for someone that supports the sport, really, you know, there's only we only see a certain amount of things, right? We think of, hey, how do we get the players there? Hey, can we turn the game on? Can we watch? But behind the scenes, you know, the amount of time and amount of work it took to get the players out there, right? There's negotiations between labor unions, negotiations between the venues, all those different things that had to happen. We're doing the same thing on our side. Luckily, the NBA is going first, right? They're the ones that are really taking the dive first, and you know, the NBA being the umbrella, really, we're going to take so many notes from how they do things. And one of the the player encore pieces to this really is a lot of our players at the G League level. The reason why they're in the G League is because they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to get to the NBA. And so part of that is that's why our season lines up with the NBA. So that way, once the season starts and they're playing at the same time, there's opportunities for them to get to the NBA. Versus, hey, if we played at totally different times, there's less motivation because you can't get called up to the Los Angeles Lakers. You can't get called up to the Golden State Warriors. You know, one of our guys at the G League level this year, Zach Norvell Jr., out of Gonzaga, he got called up to the Warriors. It was a great opportunity for him, and that's a big part of why the players do what they do, right? Is to get that opportunity. And you've seen Andre Ingram, Alex Caruso, for those that follow basketball, like those are obvious guys that have gotten the opportunity to go up to play. And so working with the players to ensure that they're ready to go, the timing's good for them. The coaches, like it's all the same things that the NBA is worrying about right now. We're undoubtedly doing behind the scenes, and we're going to have to do, especially again, hopefully toward the end of the year when we start out.
Yeah, no, that's really good to think about. And then I think also just thinking about, you mentioned contract conversations or talking about negotiating those things. I mean, I imagine there must be a COVID element to that nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, I think there's so many little things. Yeah. There's so many little things, even for someone that's like planning a wedding. And I'm not a lawyer and I don't ever want to be. Yeah. But I just now like for the amount of contracts I've read for simply hosting an event, I can only imagine what the guys at the NBA level are doing, right? For everything that they're doing, whether it's for the referees, they have their own protections and their own labor rights. The players do. For those that are working within the bubble, there's so many layers to that. That we're kind of at the G League level we're starting to touch on, but again, we are afforded the opportunity of having the NBA really go first and testing all these things out.
Yeah. I have two more. We only have a few more minutes, about like 10 more minutes left. So I wanted to ask a couple last questions that I'm seeing in the thread here, but also one that I had, which I think is timely and we should chat about, is the NBA had conversations about any social justice issues, or at least at your level with your team, or is that something that has come up between players, or maybe movements even at the G level, or other the Lakers pool? So
absolutely. I think we hired, I forget her title. We hired someone a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Brown, to really oversee programming, education, and I think she's a professor at UCLA, I believe. But Dr. Brown, though, she was someone that the organization brought on to really educate us and allow us to be more educated really on the topic of social justice and understanding what our role is to play, especially in sports where a lot of eyeballs are watching us and we have the opportunity to reach the masses. So for us internally, without getting too into details, we have regular discussions weekly. We have a library of books on history, on social justice issues, and there are so many resources that have been given to us over the last couple of weeks that have really opened my eyes. Right, there's so many different areas that I work in that I cover that I really didn't recognize. Wow, I could be so much better with. So one thing I'm looking for actually, and I'll put it out to the group too, is I'm looking to work more with Black-owned businesses, with folks that have their own food trucks specifically. So for our games, we actually have food trucks. We don't have like an in-house food and beverage provider, so we actually go and source. I personally go and look for food trucks to kind of serve our fans, and so. One thing that I wanted to be better about was understanding who am I hiring. Not that this isn't a slight to anyone I've hired before or brought in, but it's, how could I be more involved? What steps can I do to be better? What steps can I do? What can I really do just to make a bigger impact instead of just saying, I like this food truck, this sounds good, that works for me, right? Being more active in the conversation of finding businesses and organizations that really empower the community, that are involved in their communities, but also giving Black-owned businesses better opportunities and more opportunities, just because we understand that there's a system in place that may have not allowed them, and haven't allowed me to see them before. And so there's conversations. That's just one example of what we're doing. For those that have kept track at the NBA level, we've seen and we've heard that the rumors about things being painted on the courts and names on jerseys, and those are all steps that we're taking. But I can honestly say, at least for the Lakers organization, it goes much deeper than that. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we're doing just to be better internally, because there's just so many different things that that we do, that we can touch and we can cover, that we just really need to be better about, period.
Thank you. I wanted to end with this last question, and I think it perfectly ties to everything that I'm hearing from you, which is really about, well, I'll just ask the question that was asked. What is the best advice you can give in terms of really liking what you do and staying with an organization that you care about, right? And kind of what advice would you have? I think we talked a lot about internships, we talked about ways to get involved in those ways, but maybe also more just about, finding that place that means something to you.
Yeah, it's such a tough conversation. I even have this with, I think curiosity, just there's something to be said about those that are curious about what they do. And it's not just about chasing a paycheck or making ends meet. And again, there's privilege in me even saying those things, because there's people out there that have to take jobs and take opportunities that they may not want to, but have different circumstances, right? But for me, I was afforded the opportunity of going to Long Beach State, of having a four-year education and having time to figure out what that is. But I think the curiosity is so important, because it can lead you down so many avenues of what you like, what you don't like. It can lead you in places where I didn't even think I would be here, but here I am. And I think this is really interesting. Yeah. And then I think with the curiosity too, it allowed me to really not think about, X, Y, Z down the road. It allowed me to be more in the moment than anything else, of how can I better myself in the moment to be more educated, to be better suited for a job I want to take. And this is what interests me in the moment. So I'm going to hit this hard and I'm going to run with it. And so if you could find something that you find yourself Googling about late at night or reading about, or, if you're following the hashtag on Instagram, like if there are those things that are on your brain that you have a natural curiosity about already, I encourage anyone to kind of just to Google a little more, to dive a little deeper, to figure out how you can be involved. I thought one day I wanted to be a nurse. One day I thought, hey, maybe I can be a vet. No, I love animals. I'll be a vet. And I Googled and I'm like, wow, that's not for me. I don't think that's, I'm not qualified. It's just not for me. But I think, hey, the curiosity, right? I think for those that are looking to jump into any industry, is just find something that you find yourself, after you hit your 9 to 5, after you're doing whatever you need to do to cover your bases. What is it that you find yourself kind of peeking at or looking at, or find yourself really curious about? That's kind of how I've kind of wandered to where I am.
Thank you, DJ. I think we were pretty much, that's, I think, an excellent way to end the conversation. I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Noemi for any final wrap-up items. But thank you so much for sharing this time with me and to everybody watching. And I really appreciated the conversation. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think for anyone that's still here too, I mean, I won't say I'm super active on LinkedIn, but I've definitely connected with some folks over the last couple of weeks through this too. So if you find me on there, if you want to chat further, if you have any questions, happy to answer all those.
Highly encouraged to connect with DJ on LinkedIn. It's always the best way to stay connected with them. Ready?
That was going to be my question. Where can we find you on LinkedIn and what?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. If you just type in my name on LinkedIn, I'm usually there. I can also share my email address with Cynthia too. So if anyone on here, I don't know the best way to facilitate that. I don't want Cynthia to get blown up with emails too, but however you guys want to do it, just let me know. Happy to chat further. I don't have all the answers, but I'm happy to at least give you some of my experience to see if I can point you in the right direction.
Wonderful. So if anyone wants DJ's email, please just email alumni@CSUB-alumni, and we will connect you with DJ. Thank you, DJ, for a great conversation. Thank you, James, for moderating another great conversation. Thank you all for attending today. And again, this session was recorded and it will live on our website at csub.edu/alumni. And don't forget to follow us on social media at CSUB Alumni to learn about future chats like this and other programs. Thank you and have a great day.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.